Okay, some breaking news. Carson Beck changing his mind about the 2025 season. He's not going to go in the NFL draft. He's going to go into the transfer portal. So this is reporting from Pete Nakos over at On Three. Um, I mean, I cannot confirm that. I think there's a couple of things. There's a lot going on here at once, to be honest with you. First of all, if Carson decides to do this, I completely understand just going back for one more year of college. He has the eligibility to do it, like very few people. He still has his COVID year. So there's that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it would give him another opportunity to show what he's got. I think he had a season in 2024 that was, I mean, I don't think there's much question about it. He did not have the season that I thought he would have and that he thought he would have. So I think for Carson, starting over would be a good thing. Now, that he's not going to Georgia is the part that I think we've got to explore, because what does that actually mean? Does that mean that he didn't want to do it? He didn't want to go back to Georgia. He felt like he had his time there, which he's had half a decade. So there's that. Does that mean that he asked and they said, no, we're good? Did that mean that he didn't ask and just moved on? Did that mean that he asked and he found out there was changes that he just didn't want to be a part of? I mean, we don't know. I mean, I think Gunner played pretty well in the Sugar Bowl, to be honest with you. But the offensive production, not just in that game, but this season has just not been good. And the Sugar Bowl is the same thing. So I, you know, it is perplexing when you see news break. I mean, this was not expected. This was not one of these things where, oh, breaking news, Malachi Stark's going to the NFL, or Mikal Williams, or, there's news that breaks that makes sense. This, is breaking news that's surprising breaking news. This is not something I saw happening, certainly not this time last year, that Carson would be going into his sixth year of college football. By the way, anybody that's doing 6 years of college, you're the smartest. You're one of the smartest people ever, and that is, I'm not joking. I mean, the longer that you can stay in college, the better. And I think that with NIL, it makes it easier for guys, and it makes sense to me. And this guy, he's graduated from Georgia, and he did not want to end the way that he did, and I don't blame him at all. I think it's the right way to do things. Make sure you're using the promo code MEGABET from our friends over at BetMGM. Use the promo code MEGABET, MEGABET, to get the chance to get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. The link is right down below. BetMGM. Make sure you're playing responsibly. Let's be smart about this. This is for entertainment. Again, the code is MEGABET. So Carson going, and now you'll look to BetMGM to see what are the odds for him to win the Heisman in 2025. What are the odds to the team that he goes to? I mean, it would make the most sense on many levels for him to play at Miami. I mean, it would make the most sense on a lot of levels for him to play at Miami. It would make a lot of sense for him to go to Florida State. It's 2 hours from where he grew up. It's not far. That would make a lot of sense. But, in the SEC, Tennessee's got a starting quarterback coming back. South Carolina, Georgia, we've already visited about. Auburn, I don't know what's going on at Auburn. Alabama, that would make sense to some degree. Alabama would make a lot of sense in the league, actually. LSU, no. Texas, no. Texas A&M, I'm not sure. So of all the places, Alabama, Miami, Florida State, places that are going to give him the ability to just sort of start over. Matt DeBerry, Ryan Curley, and I are on a text chain here. I mean, one thing Matt is saying, and I think this is true, he says Matt's saying it's the best decision for Carson. It's smart on his part. I agree with that. I agree with that, and here's why. Carson's value slipped during this whole thing. Why would you leave college now the rookie minimum is it's over $700,000. Okay, so it's not It's not nothing. And would you get an NIL deal for $700,000? I would imagine Carson Beck will. So what's the harm in him coming back and perhaps playing his way into a first round draft pick? Nothing. There is no harm. I mean, the harm is that he get hurt. He got hurt. He was. I don't. And for those of you who are going to say, well, he could have played in the Sugar Bowl. What world do you live in? There was no world in which he could have played in the Sugar Bowl. None. It would not have happened. He could. No. Stop. So that wasn't going to happen. Could he come back to Georgia? Yeah, he could have come back to Georgia, but it sounds like that's just not, I would imagine if you're going into the portal, that tells you all you need to know is that he's not going back to Georgia. And if I were him, I wouldn't go back to Georgia either. I mean, you're now at this stage, you've had a natural transition, a guy that that didn't think that he'd be back next year in Gunnar Stockton, didn't think that Carson Beck would be back. You come back, I don't know what's going on. I mean, there's always change in the coaching staff at Georgia. I've covered Georgia 25 years. I think in 1 year of the 25, there's not been coaching changes at the assistant level. So that always happens. And, my guess is that someone said, hey, why are you going to the league when you're looking like a third, fourth, fifth round pick? Why are you going to the league when you can come here and possibly be a first or a second next year? We can give you what you need for a season, and you can, rehabilitate, be ready for the fall, and go ball out then. It makes a lot of sense to me. For Georgia, I mean, this really doesn't change anything. I mean, the only thing it would change would be what if you play him next year. I didn't mention Ole Miss. I don't know what's going on with Jackson Dart. I think he is going. So where could Carson wind up? Ole Miss would make sense. Alabama would make sense. Miami would make the most sense to me. Florida State. There's places that he could go. But with what Cam Ward, the quarterback that just left Miami, he literally did this last year. He was leaving Washington State, and I think he was turning pro. And Miami came in and said, hey, come down here, be the guy for a year, elevate your stock status, etc. And he did. I mean, he definitely, Cam Ward is top 3, something like that. I mean, and the other thing too, this should be said as well, more than for Carson. This is a bad draft class for the quarterbacks. It's not good. It is possible you could have one starting quarterback that's in this class. And that's just, as rough as quarterbacks have become in the world of NFL. I mean, you look at like Kirk Cousins, look at Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a bad example. Look at how quickly guys get cycled out, even if they're number 1 overalls. Sam Darnold's a good example of that. Now he's seemingly found his place in Minneapolis, but you get my point. You want to maximize your situation, and quarterbacks are not like running backs, but it's becoming that they will just get rid of you. It is becoming that quarterbacks I never thought I'd say that. I never thought the SEC would be better in basketball than the ACC, but that is so obviously clear. I never thought that quarterbacks would become so disposable in the NFL, but they have become that. And the worst situation to be in is a guy where you're in a bad situation. Bryce Young in Charlotte, or a lot of these guys. I mean, look at Indianapolis. I mean, how long are they hang on to Richardson? I mean, that's not working right now. And they just drafted him, number 4 overall. So if you're Carson, you got to look around and be like, man, I know I can do this. And the 24 season is not indicative of who I am. The 23 season is. So now you come back and you play 25. What does it mean for Georgia? I mean, to me, it doesn't mean anything unless you're going to go play him. And if you're playing him, you know what he can do. He can really rack up yards, and he can score a lot of points quick. I mean, all you got to do is ask Tech. All you got to do is ask, Tennessee. There's Alabama. I mean, Carson showed this season how fast he can. I mean, he's like a microwave sometimes. but he made a lot of mistakes in 2024 as well. He played better at the end of the season than at the beginning. I mean, the stretch from Alabama to Florida, he had 3 games in there that were not ideal games. The Alabama game, I would argue the Texas game, and then the Florida game. That stretch of time, he played pretty well against Auburn. Against State, it was okay, but that was his probably worst 4-game stretch, if that's 4 games or 5, that he's had at Georgia. In the 30-ish games that he started, 30 is probably high, probably 25 games that he started. Those were his worst stretches. And for Georgia folks who are just going to like be bent out of shape about this, I mean, so many of y'all were ready for him to leave anyway. What do you care, right? And then secondly, and on top of that, if you've got your guy in Gunner, what difference does it make if Carson's going to go play for somebody else? I don't think that part matters. I think it's the right move for Carson, and I think having given 5 years of his career, of his collegiate career, to Georgia, having given his right elbow to Georgia, I think this is a completely understandable situation. I think that it's the right move for Carson. And in a sport where seemingly everybody is making the right move for themselves, why should Carson not do the same thing for him? Just why? Because he wears silver breeches? No. He needs to do what he's supposed to do. No one thought he'd be back at Georgia next year anyway. This doesn't change anything for Georgia. It does give someone, if he were to go to Miami, I don't know Miami's roster super well. I think Alabama's pretty good. They are missing a quarterback next season. He would address that immediately. Ole Miss. Part of it is we don't know where he's going. So, whereas Miami makes a lot of sense, I don't know if Georgia would play Miami next season. I mean, they're not scheduled to, but with this expanded playoff, you just never know. And in that world, in the world of the ACC, so long as Carson has a good offensive line to protect him, which, this season, it wasn't really that he was getting killed on that front, but he wasn't getting help on the offensive in terms of running the football. Next season, this is a great schedule for the Canes. They play Bethune-Cookman, who they always play HBCUs, it seems like, or they do a lot, I should say. But they play South Florida. Obviously, they play the Noles. Maybe it's not quite as good as I would hope. They do play Florida at home. They do play Notre Dame at home. And, of course, they'll go to Florida State. They'll play Syracuse at home. There's a lot to work with here. They got road games against Pitt, SMU, and Virginia Tech. I'm not seeing and Florida State. So they'll play 8. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They are scheduled to play 8 home games at Hard Rock. That's awesome for Miami. That's a great situation. And you open with Notre Dame, who could win the national championship this season. We don't know when that game will be, but you open with them. That is a fantastic start to the season for them. And then they get the Gators. They'll play Florida and Notre Dame in the first 4 weeks of the season. You're going to know real quick with Miami. But we don't know. I mean, we don't know where he's going to go. And it's just one of those things. The Noles and Alabama open against each other next season. The Noles play at Clemson. They play at the Swamp. They play Miami. They play, the usual set of ACC games, which is not great. But I'm glad for Carson that he gets sort of to reboot this and redo this. This is probably the right move for him. For Georgia, I mean, some people are just going to, kind of shit all over Carson because, if you're not all Georgia, then you're not. But like JT Daniels is not all Georgia. Stetson left. I mean, this is what it is, guys. I mean, this is how if it bothers you, that's fine. But this is the new world that we live in, and I think for Carson, he has a fiduciary responsibility to himself. He has a mental health responsibility to himself and a physical responsibility to himself to maximize his potential and his ability and his one shot at getting drafted. You don't get drafted more than once in the NFL. And this is his shot to go as high as possible. Whereas, I mean, he might have been a 5th round, 6th round guy. And like, that's not maximizing your value. And it's not giving yourself the best ability to start. I mean, that's what you want in the NFL, is the best chance to start. And then you have to take it from there. If you're not taking it from there, then, shame on you. All right, that's the breaking news. Carson Beck headed to the portal. Wow.